think that's pretty good, like, kind of rundown. We talked about the state championships. We talked about the Brazilian Cup. We talked about the Brazilian Championship in and of itself. We talked about the season and the challenges that come with the season being kind of, out there. Something you mentioned that I feel is worth repeating, like, it is one of the more exciting leagues in the world because there's so much to play for. Like, you very, very rarely get that, like, the last 3 rounds are just going to be boring because we already know who won. It's like, you can know who won, like, 10 rounds before, but then every other team still has things to play for.
Yeah.
Welcome to another Brazilianaires podcast where we bring you everything about Brazilian culture from our point of view. We want to make you an honorary Brazilian. We want to bring you into the fold and show you all the beauty, the uniqueness, the hilarity of Brazilian culture beyond a couple of memes that you might have seen on the internet. Today we're going to have a conversation about football, soccer in Brazil. We're going to go over the league. We're going to go over why and how the system is set up to, why Brazil is so great at churning out great players one after the other, what the Brazilian Football League looks like, why it's one of the most exciting leagues in the world, and how you can get into it, and how you can start watching it right now.
Hell yeah.
First things first, what do you know about the Brazilian League? Like, I know you know some of it.
Yeah, I know that, I know the teams. Okay. I know that there's some certain teams, like, in the big cities that are popping, and then there's, there's the teams in the big cities that are, like, not as rich. So they're not as poppin', and it's mostly like there's like 6 to 8 teams that are good and they're always competing, and then there's like the mid-tier teams, and then there's the relegation teams that like jump in and out.
Yeah.
That's pretty much what I know.
Fair enough. It's a good place to start. The Brazilian League, the Brasileirão Série A, which means the first division, right? It consists of 20 teams. It's run by the CBF, which is the Confederação Brasileira de Futebol, the Brazilian Football Federation. Yeah, it consists of only 20 teams in the top flight. In that way, it's a lot like the Premier League, where Premier League is also a 20-team league.
Makes sense.
I think it differs from the Premier League because 4 teams get relegated, whereas in the Premier League, it's 3 teams that get relegated.
Okay. Not a huge difference.
Not a huge difference, but, for Premier League fans, they'll be like,
no, but we only relegate 3.
Okay, it's not exactly the same league.
Not Premier League fans specifically, just internet people.
Just annoying internet people
will always complain about anything. Feel free to complain in the comments.
But you know what? I know that if you're watching this, you're not one of those annoying internet people. but okay, so it's a 20-team league. 4 teams get relegated and 4 teams subsequently promoted from the second division.
Nice.
It's a home and away kind of league where you'll play 2 rounds. The first round, we call it the first round pretty much.
Nice.
But it's every team plays each other 19 times. Primeiro turno in Portuguese. And then we have the segundo turno, which is the same schedule but now
if
flipped.
You played home, now you play away.
Exactly.
Oh, okay. So you play every team twice.
Yeah. In the same order.
Wow.
Ish. We'll get into the little asterisk is that there's so many competitions going on at the same time. Yeah. Sometimes we've had to postpone like the 6th round's games, and then they don't end up playing until like round 31, like the 6th round. What's cool about the Brazilian League, to me, is the regional rivalries. Is the crowd, like the fans, the supporters get really into their team. Like,
it's like being in a gang. Like if you're wearing the jersey out on the street, like you could be wrong place, wrong time. Like it is very like territorial.
Yeah. So when you're watching like a derby or you're watching like one of the big teams, like it's such a vibe. Like to be in the arena, but even be watching it from outside, like you see them chanting, you see them singing, they have organized like supporter clubs, right? But it is very organized. They make their own songs. They bring like drums and whatnot, which is not something you don't see in Europe, but it's not European.
You really see it. You really see it in Brazil. We went to a game. They had these huge flags like Cruzeiro Reggae, like the reggae club, Cruzeiro Autism Club. I was like, cool, I guess. That's nice to have like a autism charity of fans. Like that's but they like take turns. I was like, who does this benefit to be waving this giant flag? Probably exhausting, heavy. Like, you're just blocking us from seeing things, and you're just getting in the way. Like, and who does it benefit? No, but then everyone loves it. They're just passing it off to each other. Party. They're like swinging it. Like, it's crazy.
But yeah, so Brazilians are passionate in a way that is quite unique to Brazil, and that extends to football as well. So I think that is really good. Brazilian academies, like, we are among the best in, like, you know, creating good players.
Player
development, yeah. The league parity is, there's something to be said, you know, where, like I said.
Something to be said, like, what is parity?
What like, the league is very even.
Oh, okay.
Like,
nice.
you don't always see, like in Premier League, you could probably name the same 4 or 5 teams as contenders every year.
Right, yeah.
Not to say in Brazil you can't, but, like, look at this like example, for example. Look at this example.
Yeah, nice.
Palmeiras, for example, as I said, is now one of the probably better run teams, and
this
always
is just an
challenging. Is always challenging for titles. Is like sells their players really well. Has a really good coach. Has a really good like system for creating, you know, good football and like visually pleasing football.
And they're out of São Paulo, right?
They're out of São Paulo.
Yeah.
And now they're experiencing a high, but 2004, 5, 6, 7, 8, like at one of those years they got relegated. They were in the second division. Like, they spent some time like figuring out their team. And before that, in the 90s, they were like one of the best teams in Brazil. They had Rivaldo, Roberto Carlos, Cafu, like all these great players.
All the like national team.
When you look at the 2002 team that won the championship, a lot of them came from Palmeiras, from that big Palmeiras team.
Wow.
So it's, as I'm saying, it's cyclical, right? Where you can say Palmeiras is one of the traditional clubs. Palmeiras has not always been one of the title contenders,
right? If
you catch my drift.
Yeah.
Same thing with like Cruzeiro and São Paulo. Cruzeiro, for example, was the first and only team to beat Pelé's Santos. Like, back in the day, Pelé, and he was playing on Santos, that was the team to beat. It wasn't as common for like Brazilian players to go play overseas. I mean, it happened, but it wasn't as common. So Pelé kind of spent his whole career in Brazil, and that Santos team, aside from Pelé, had a whole bunch of other players that just made it like the team to beat. They did tours all over the world. They did a whole bunch of exhibition games, and they were considered, like, as I said, the men, the guys, the standard to beat. And this Cruzeiro team, again, Cruzeiro is not from like São Paulo or Rio. So it's out of the what we call the eixo, the axis of powers, right? So media is very focused on São Paulo and Rio teams. They talk about the 4 Rio teams a lot and the 4 São Paulo teams a lot. Just so we know for context, the Rio teams are Fluminense, Flamengo, Vasco da Gama, and Botafogo. Always an afterthought. Now they're changing it. They're changing it now, guys.
Yeah.
And the 4 São Paulo teams are São Paulo Futebol Clube, Corinthians, Palmeiras, and this team doesn't play in São Paulo, but it's one of the big clubs of São Paulo State. It's Santos.
Oh, okay, nice.
Santos is its own city. It's like a port city.
Right. It's in the state, but it's not the city.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Fair.
So, outside of those 8 teams, like, you don't really hear a lot. And especially back in the 60s, right? Like, you had a team from São Paulo beating everybody, and that's an easy, great storyline, right? And Cruzeiro, not only were they facing that, where they're kind of like relative unknowns, their whole squad was kind of like this scrappy, like, young kids. Like, unproven, scrappy roster.
Underdogs.
Let's
go.
And not only did they come and beat Pelé's team, they beat them 6-2.
6-2?
6-2.
Jeez.
In a game, in the final. Like,
in the final?
They dismantled.
Damn.
They dismantled that team.
Let's go.
Yeah. And so you have stories like that, like where, again, the opportunities lie here, but then you have teams like Cruzeiro, like Atlético, like from the south, Grêmio and Internacional, which also have very powerful, very well-run teams now.
Nice.
But it's interesting to see kind of these stories, right? Where, again, team cohesion kind of matters more than like star players. Maybe as a result of our culture, maybe as a result of how the league kind of is shaped and the external factors.
You see that in like the NBA too. Like there's so many like, oh, we're gonna bring like the big three. We're gonna bring like these super teams, and then they get beaten, but like they don't gel together. Like, and it is like a lot of like in the Olympics too. Like all these American superstars show up, and then these teams that have been playing together for like 10 years, they actually play together. They know each other. They play team basketball instead of like ISO or like just, well, you're the superstar. You're gonna go one-on-one. Like,
there's something to be said too about just like. Like it's ignorance is not the right word, but it's kind of like the blissful ignorance of youth. It's kind of like, oh, who, like when you're a 19-year-old, you're like, who cares? That's Pele. I'm gonna show him how I'm the fucking best. Like, I'm the best in my neighborhood, bro. I'm the Pele.
Beat anybody.
I'm the Pele of my street, bro.
Yeah. Who's to say I'm not the next Pele? Like, they don't have the experience of
one of the players on that team was Gisele Lopes, who became kind of like one of the all-time greats in Brazil.
Hell yeah.
You know, heralded. But yeah, like who's to say? I think in the NBA you see that less because when you talk about playoffs, right? Like on any given night, yes, any team can beat any other team, but over 7 games, usually you see the best team come out on top, which is why they have a 7-game series, right? If we're being honest. But it's interesting, those kind of stories where it's like, yo, you never know what can happen here.
And it's funny, like everyone loves an underdog. Like everyone wants to be the number one team. You want to be the best. And then as soon as you're the best, everyone's like, no, we want to see someone else. We want to see you fall. Like, we want to see you get destroyed. And then, it's so funny to have just, like, scrappy underdog kids, like, all right, here we go. Like, any given Sunday, like, any game could be our game. Like, good for them. That's awesome. That's exciting. Yeah. So there's there's 4 in São Paulo, 4 in Rio. And then there's 2 out of Minas Gerais, which is, like, the Texas, the interior state of apparently Texas is more the south because like the Gaúchos, but whatever.
Interesting.
The hillbilly state of our state, and then there's 10 teams that are just like, you know, like the best teams of every, like, because there's 26 states, so there's 10 teams that are just the other states all together.
I mean, honestly, no. It's not like the league has that sort of representation from, hey, we want to get one of each state.
Right.
In the Brazilian Cup, yes, like you said, it's just to correct you, like it's not like every single team gets to enter, but like I think 3 to 4 teams from each state get like a berth in it.
Okay,
you know?
Nice. Yeah.
So
obviously it's not like representative, but like I'm just mean like who are all the other teams?
So great question. I think that's where you were getting to, and it's interesting you bring that up. I just saw today that this year there's only 7 states being represented in the first division, and I believe it's 6 teams from São Paulo state.
6?
Yeah. So that's São Paulo, Corinthians, Palmeiras, Santos, Red Bull Bragantino, which is a team that Red Bull went and purchased in the interior of São Paulo. And then Mirassol, which is like an underdog story. Like Serie D team usually. We made it all the way now to Serie A. This is their 100th anniversary.
Wow.
I don't think they've ever been in the first division ever. Wow. And like they're there.
Good for them.
Yeah.
Mirassol, does that translate to like look at the sun? More or less?
Probably, but it's the name of the city, Mirassol.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right.
But yeah, Miras. It's funny because in Portuguese we don't really say mira, we say olha. Olha o sol.
Mira is more of a Spanish
Mirasol maybe is like a plant or something like. Girasol is like a sunflower seed.
Yeah.
Mirasol maybe is like a plant that turns itself to the. Drop it in the comments. Where did the name Mirasol come from?
Yeah.
Luxan.
That's cool though. And then so 6 from them. How many from Rio?
So we've got, I believe, 4 from Rio. Botafogo. Flamengo. Vasco. Fluminense. Keep track for me. That's 10,
That's
right?
10, yeah.
We have Atlético Mineiro and Cruzeiro.
That's the 2 from
Belo
Minas.
Horizonte.
Yeah.
We have from Rio Grande do Sul, we have Grêmio, Inter, and Juventude.
3?
Now. Yeah.
Wow.
So that's 15.
Yeah.
We have one from Pernambuco called Sport Sport. We have. That's okay. What am I missing? I'm missing 4.
16. You're missing 4.
Oof. We have
Fortaleza.
Bahia. Yeah, Fortaleza.
Yeah.
Which are like in the northeast.
Yeah. Is there Vitória?
Maybe. Yeah, Vitória, which is also in Bahia. So now we're missing one.
No, Vitória is in Espírito Santo.
No, Vitória. The team Vitória is in Bahia.
What?
Very confusing. Yeah.
Trickery.
They don't play in Vitória, the city of Vitória.
Really?
No.
Wow.
But interesting
Nonsense.
one. Yeah.
And then one more team.
Oh, this is gonna bother me, isn't it? Maybe not.
Don't worry about
If it was your team, you write that in the comments, yo.
Yeah. Cool.
Okay. Maybe Ceará. I don't know who are the teams that came up.
I don't think Ceará is this year.
That's what I'm saying. I don't know the teams that came up.
Right.
It could be one of the ones that came up.
True.
Anyways.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's unique in that this is the first time maybe there's only 7 states. I don't know. Someone should look into that. Probably the people doing podcasts.
Out of 26, and there's 10 teams from 2.
From 2 states.
That's crazy.
Well, that goes to show you, like... And again, I think we got onto this subject kind of talking about the parity of the league, like...
Which I still don't know what that means.
Parity is like the evenness, right?
Oh, right.
Like,
Yeah. So I do know what that means.
And like I said, there is parity, but it's not like, oh, every year there's like a new upstart contender. It's kind of like these main 13... 14 teams, like they'll just switch around.
They're all relatively competitive.
Exactly. Like, and when I say the 13 teams, there is something called the G13, which is like the 13 main clubs of Brazil, which I'm not going to list them, but there's 13 of them.
Nice.
It's like the São Paulo people, the Rio people, the Minas people, the South people, and I think Bahia.
Nice.
I think that's where
Fortaleza's not in it?
No.
Oh, wow.
Fortaleza now has become a powerhouse, but Fortaleza traditionally was not one of the big clubs in Brazil. Like now, they're an example of like, hey, a well-managed team that has patience with its coach, that has a long-term strategy and has patience with its coach and understands that its coach is trying to build a system and has patience with him and allows him to have a body of work, and now they're seeing the results, right? They're one of the top teams. They qualified for Libertadores. I believe they were 3rd in the championship.
Nice.
They were finalists of the Sul-Americana a few years back. Like,
nice.
They are an example of good management and the difference that a well-managed team can make.
That's what's good about not being like the main team in the spotlight all the time. Like, you do get to, things go under the radar. You don't have so many fans charging success all the time. Yeah.
2 years ago, I think I was telling you this off camera, but Botafogo, who won last year, 2 years ago, halfway through the season, they were like 21 points ahead of the next best team. And from that point, they had such a magnificent decline. They didn't even qualify for the Libertadores automatic spots. They came in 5th.
Wow.
From lock on to be champions to 5th place finish.
That's crazy.
What a comeback, or what a downfall. And 2 years ago again, on the last day, there were 4 possible teams that could have been relegated based on the combination of results. Like, if this team wins and that team wins and that team wins and these 2 teams lose, that team would make it. If this team wins, they would save themselves. Like, if you know what I mean? There was a whole mix of emotions going on where you don't even I wasn't even a fan of any of the teams that were competing, but it's like, oh dang, are they gonna make it?
What's gonna happen? Yeah, and it's live too. Yeah, I remember. I think that's the year that Santos got relegated.
Yes,
and they were 12th.
Yes,
and then everybody just happened to win, and Santos lost at the last second, and they just dropped to 16th, and they got relegated to the next
you're
league.
You're so right. Santos is kind of the humorous story where it's the whole time Santos was safe. The last round, the last few rounds, it couldn't just they couldn't get the results to keep themselves there, but they were kind of all right. The whole time, the media and all the fans were oh no, it's gonna be between these 3 teams to see who gets relegated, and then it's nope, it's gonna be us.
No surprise.
And they did a reverse Verstappen where they just sunk quickly to that position.
Jeez, yeah, they just plummeted. Yeah. That's crazy.
I remember actually watching the last game where it was kind of like, oh man, it was so funny. Santos, like, all you needed to do was just tie and you stay there.
Mm-hmm.
And they were like winning the game, and then in the second half the other team tied, and they were like, all right, that's fine.
Yeah.
But then like it was like 90th minute plus 4 of stoppage time, and in that stoppage time the other team scored.
Oh my god.
The other team was kind of like they didn't really have much to play for, but Santos, you just, but you want to win, you gotta freaking win,
exactly.
bro.
Everybody has, like you said, everybody has something to play for at all times. Like, even like if you're not moving forward, you're standing still. Like, yo, if we win this, if we tie, whatever, but if we win, then we can qualify for the cup.
Yes.
So
yeah. And there's also the prize money factor, right? So depending on where you finish, that's your prize money from the federation.
Right.
So it's like, okay, the difference between 11th and 10th place, that's like $4 million, brother. Like, let's go. We're all playing to win here,
exactly.
you know?
Wow.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But it does create this humorous situation where I think last year, like, if you look at the table, like, everyone except for 2 of the middle of the road teams, like, has some sort of consequence. The top 6 get Libertadores, the other 10 or the other 8 get like Sudamericana, and the bottom 4 get relegated. Like, it's literally the 15th and 16th place teams are the only ones that we're just happy to be here for next year.
Yeah. We just hope that everyone has a good time. Wow, that's really exciting, because that kind of like eliminates a lot of the like. In North American teams, and I'm thinking like in F1 specifically, like there's the winner, and then there's the points, and then there's the who cares.
Mm-hmm.
Like doesn't matter. But like this is like if you care about the midfield, because look, we can even if we're not first, we could probably still qualify for the Libertadores. Which I was thinking, is that translate to Liberators? Yeah, for the Liberators Championship. And then, like, okay, we can qualify to Liberators, or, like, we don't want to get relegated, or, like, we want to make it to the South American, because that's potentially more money, or at least, like, for fans, more opportunity to see my team play, like, more games.
Well, it's more money because it's more games. So the more games you have at home, the more tickets you're selling, the more concessions. Again, it's...
Yeah.
And really, teams in Brazil are now starting to understand themselves as media companies, so they're really focused on creating that sort of content. And the other exciting thing that's happening now in Brazil is the rise or the introduction of owners, like ownership groups.
Right.
Traditionally, Brazilian sports teams and even the major soccer teams have been social groups in a sense. It was founded way back when it was like the only way for amateurs to play athletics. Like, it's like a leisure club, like a country club, if you will.
Right.
That's why you have a team like Clube Atlético Mineiro, Clube Atlético Paranaense. It's the athletic club of the city.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Traditionally, that's what it was. It's the club where you go on the weekends to go
to just go play with your friends and stuff.
Exactly.
Right.
And of that was born like, oh, cool. Like, we can now field a team to go out and play these like city tournaments, regional tournaments.
Other teams.
Eventually, that became the Brazilian Championship.
That's crazy. That's so organic. Like, it's not like they sat down and they were like, we're going to make a league and this is what we're going to do. It was just like, you would play in the city, you would get a reputation of we're the best team in the city.
Yeah.
We have like and then the best teams of the cities would start playing against the best teams of other cities, and it just became a league, not out of like, like capitalism or like someone planned it, but just out of like, we love playing soccer so much. And people love watching it.
Really, it was out of the need to answer the question, well, who is the best team? Like, well, you are the best of São Paulo, and we are the best of Rio, and they're the best of Minas Gerais. Who's actually the best team?
True.
You know? And so it started off as like just kind of like little smaller tournament, 4-team, 5-team, 8-team, 13-team, like expansions. But really, it was kind of born out of answering that question. Well, I'm the best. No. I'm the best.
That's so cool.
Yeah. And now, as I said, you can see like ownership clubs or ownership groups coming in, injecting money, bringing in that like European sort of style of managing a club. For example, Citigroup, which is like Manchester City and has many like, teams within the world. Yeah. They just purchased a few years ago Bahia. So they own the Bahia club.
Nice.
Botafogo is owned by John Textor, who also owns like Crystal Palace in England, Lyon in France. And so you see some sort of like some tricky maneuvers where like the Botafogo guy is signing Botafogo players or signing players for Botafogo, but kind of like with the promise of like, hey, if you play well, you have a pathway straight to Europe, like straight to England, straight to France. And he's also taking advantage of the fact, like Lyon, which is one of his clubs in France, they're facing penalties for like financial fair play, which basically states you cannot just inject money endlessly into the club in order to sign players. Like you have to use money that the club actually generates as revenue.
Right.
So Lyon is facing those sorts of penalties, and what he's doing is one of the penalties they're facing is they cannot sign new players. Like they don't have money, they can't sign new players. What he's doing is loaning the players from Botafogo to Lyon. So he's like sidestepping those like, oh, you can't sign players? That's okay. I'm not signing them. I'm getting them on loan.
Right.
It's like,
yeah.
From your other team. So like you're just keeping it, you're just taking from one pocket and putting in the other, you know?
Nice. That's cool. And like you're saying, like they could you could get like a young player that's developed, that's like in Lyon or in Man City, and be like, look, we're going to put you in Brazil for a little bit while you're still like 17. Play against this competition, like grow, develop, elevate on the beach in Brazil in the warm weather, and then you'll come back and be a superstar here with like more playtime, because otherwise you would just be coming off the bench. But here and there you can like start.
Heck yeah, that would totally be my pitch, especially, and I think it is the city pitch. It's like, hey, do you want to go develop in Auckland, in Goa, like, or do you want to go to Brazil and develop? Do you want to go develop in Brighton, in Newcastle? No offense to Brighton and Newcastle, but like, it's not Bahia. It's not Salvador.
Bahia is where Brazilians go for tourism, for the beach, for that stuff. So that's the place to be.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Cool. Just, I guess, taking a step back, you mentioned the Brazilian Cup.
Yeah.
What's also unique and, I mean, very, very unique about Brazilian soccer is that there's these things called state championships. So before the actual Brasileirão starts, it's kind of like right in the beginning of the season, like it's happening right now, there's these state championships. So every club is a member of their state federation, and that state federation promotes a championship every year. So you have states like São Paulo and Rio where there's just like more population and more money that have a lot more teams. I believe like the Paulistão, which is the São Paulo State Championship, has about 20 to 24 teams. Wow. 16 to 20. I could be wrong. Someone's going to correct me for sure in the comments.
If you know in the comments, let us know.
Whereas like Minas Gerais, there's Cruzeiro, Atlético, América, and then 9 other teams. Like there's really 12 teams. And really, if we're being honest, like the drop off between Atlético, Cruzeiro, America is like there, but you know, not quite there. Yeah. And then it's a steep cliff to the rest of them. You know?
Yeah.
Now, to be fair, there's teams like Atlético and Tombense, which are, you know, investing money and kind of have been up to
those little Cinderella teams that like you know, you win one big game and now you're climbing.
The Cinderella teams that are also benefiting from like good management. Like it's not a Man City that's buying them, but like a good smart group of investors is coming in and buying it and actually running the team like it's supposed to be run.
Nice.
Right?
That's awesome.
I've always wanted to run a Brazilian team or even a league because I had the experience working in North American sports, and it's like, how are you guys even functioning as a business if you don't do these basic tenets, right? Like I've always thought the Brazilian league, instead of like being so needy of the CBF, the teams should just join and create their own league, right? Like create its own entity, like the Premier League. That's what the Premier League is. It's its own entity. It negotiates TV rights as a whole. That's why you can turn on any Premier League game. Well, you can turn on a game and you'll know immediately, oh, this is a Premier League game just by watching it. It's very standardized. The fields are standardized. The uniforms are standardized. The arena like signage is all standardized. Right. In Brazil, not so much. In Brazil, you have, for example, in these state championships, you have players making millions per month facing teams of players who are making like 50,000 a year, 30,000 a year, like, and not only that, like, not only the disparity of their incomes, but like, you have trips that are not easy to take. Like, let's take Cruzeiro's example, or Atlético that are from Belo Horizonte. If they have to go to Ubá, which the team from Ubá is now in the first division,
really,
and Atlético did go play in Ubá, there's no direct flight from Belo Horizonte to Ubá.
Right.
There's not even an airport in Ubá that can carry, like, that can comport a thing of that size, like a plane of that size.
Right.
So you're facing, like, which is, I guess, relatively chill, like a 6-hour bus ride. 6 to 8 hour bus ride.
Yeah.
It's relatively chill because, players, they've got buses and blah, blah, blah. But imagine you're Hulk who plays on Atletico and you're used to, like, you're Europe, you're making euros, like, you're
living a good life.
Like, you're Gabigol who plays in Cruzeiro. Now, this guy makes $3.5 million. Like, he probably could buy a new car each month if he wants to. Per month, right? Like, and now he's having to sit on this bus to go to this, like, crappy stadium in the middle of nowhere that barely fits 2,000 people, like, barely has a change room, like, you know what I mean? Like, the discrepancies are still very, very huge, Plus, you're talking about Brazil in the summer where it's like 30, 40 degrees heat. The fields are garbage. Like, some of them are straight garbage. Like, there's no, like, I mean, there is a standard, but no one's really enforcing that standard.
Right.
And you have, like, we were talking about the Cinderella stories. You have teams, like, good teams, like, well-built, like, Palmeiras is one of the better, like, managed financially teams, losing to a minnow because, what is this garbage field? We're just making passes straight to each other, and the ball
it just, like, hits a hole and, like, chips.
And that's it. It's like, I'm not saying, boo-hoo, like, poor guys, we can't play in less than optimal conditions. But when you're used to only playing in optimal conditions, like, it takes something to, like, okay, wait a minute, so I can't make this pass. I can't make straightforward passes, so I gotta change the way I'm playing. Whereas that other team, they're used to playing.
That other team's like, well, that's the mud patch. We go around that instinctually. Yeah, that's where we buried that guy that one time.
That's where we buried our last coach.
That's kind of like what they have no business even playing each other. Like, they're at completely different levels at all.
Tell me about it, brother. There is a strong push, or there's a controversy around the fans specifically, but it's like, why are our teams wasting time playing these championships? Like, you don't really get much from winning, and you get a lot of hate if you lose.
Right.
Like, imagine if you're a top team and you're losing to these small teams. Like, it's a lose-lose. If you beat them, it's like, no fucking shit, you beat them. Like, and if you don't beat them, it's like, you guys fucking suck. Fire the coach right now. And that's another thing of Brazilian football is the fans are not patient at all. Like, 2 games in, if the coach hasn't won both of them by 5-0 scorelines, fire that guy. This guy's going nowhere. Like, a player will be brought from the academy, and if he's not the next Neymar within the first 3 games, he's garbage. He's a bum. Get rid of that bum. Like, there's no patience, you know?
Yeah.
To complicate it, to make matters worse, the Brazilian league season is pretty much the opposite of the European season. So the start of the Brazilian season is like February, like January, February. So our beginning, like, transfer window is like December to February. That's when teams are, like, building their squads.
Right. The off season.
That's the off season. Meanwhile, in Europe, at the same time, they're right in the middle of their season. So, like, that's when, like, teams from Europe are like, let me pick up a couple, like, let me shore up some positions. Let me sell some players here.
Trade deadline.
Let me get ready. Exactly. It's more of a trade deadline vibe. Let me get ready for the off season where we'll make our big splashes, right? In Brazil, it's the opposite. We start in January, and our midsummer, like, or what's midsummer, like June, July, that's the middle of our season. And that's when the European teams are, like, shelling out cash and they come knocking. So you've it's happened a lot of times where, like, the league leading team will get basically decimated by purchases and transfers, and for the segundo turno, the second half of the season, completely tank in the standings because heck, we don't have
our
a
players
team
left. Yeah.
And like you mentioned before, unlike North American sports, tanking is not to your benefit. Like if you're the Lakers and you suck all year and you win 11 games, you get probably the first overall pick or top 5 at the very least. If you suck all season in Brazil and you don't win any games, you get sent to the league with the other sucky teams.
Yeah. You could just all the way down.
You can keep tumbling forever.
Yeah,
exactly.
yeah.
Whereas like the NBA is different, where it's like
you just hit the ground. You're like, all right, well, we'll just be bad this season. And
you don't even hit the ground. You hit a trampoline, and
right.
Whereas like where it's now a valid strategy for some teams to be bad.
Yeah.
Oh, we know we're not going to be the best. You know, our top players are injured. It's fine. Let's just punt this season. Let's use it to develop our guys because we know we have control of them.
Draft pick.
In Brazil, that strategy would not work whatsoever. Let's use it to develop our guys. All right, cool. In the middle of the season, Man City's like, cool, we'll scoop.
Snag,
we'll go take that guy. And then you think, oh, well, but at least the team is getting paid for it. It's like, yes, they're getting paid for it. But the other thing that happens in Brazilian football is like players are not valued. Players are not valued at what they're actually valued at.
Oh, dang.
Here's an example. And also sometimes it's just like the team has just done a bad job of selling it. But here's an example. Cruzeiro had a striker named Igor Thiago. I think he goes by Thiago, though. So, young guy, 18, 19. You could see that he has potential. He's like a goal scorer, but he's not like tearing things up. But he's like, give him some time. He will develop into that. This random team, Ludogorets, from, I believe is Bulgaria, comes in and was like, all right, hey, we'll give you, I think it's like 600,000 euros, which is like, that's a freaking steal for who they got. We'll give you 600,000 euros, Cruzeiro, for this guy. He's 19, whatever, like. And because of, like I said, the aforementioned, like, fire sales usually that happen is like, a lot of teams will sell their kind of like younger players so that they can keep the rest of the squad together.
Pay the high-paying guys.
Exactly.
The stars.
So, Cruzeiro sells this guy, 625. They keep a percentage probably of that. FIFA also has a solidarity mechanism where, like, if you're the team who trained this guy, like if he started at your academy, you get a small percentage of an eventual sale, right? So, this guy goes to Ludogorets, I think in Bulgaria, maybe in Hungary. I'm going to Google it after.
Let us know in the comments.
He plays well. He helps them like qualify, or he helps them in the Champions League knockouts. I think he helps them do pretty well in the Europa League. 2-3 seasons later, he gets sold to Brentford for £33 million.
Wow.
So you're telling me that 2 years playing in Bulgaria turned him from a $600,000 player to a $33 million player? No, it didn't. But for a Brazilian club, 600,000 euros is like 3.5 million reais. It's like, oh, cool. I can pay like 3 months of expenses with this and whatever. This guy's not really tearing it up, right?
And like this is Brazil. We make like there's so many kids coming out of the academy.
But that's the problem, right? That to me is in a nutshell one of the biggest problems in Brazilian football. You're not valuing your best assets. You have Benfica from Portugal, which is, don't get me wrong, I think it's a super smart strategy, but they come in, they'll raid academies, they'll raid like these young players from teams that are doing well, let them adapt to European football in a environment where they speak the language and blah blah blah. It's a little bit feels like home, but it's also Europe.
It's like a transition.
And then 50x their investment within a season or two. And when they don't 50x it, if they're keeping the player, that's because the player is contributing, right? And so
it's worth keeping.
Exactly. So I think that's one of the big problems. We can get into a lot of the big problems.
That's what's really interesting about the Brazilian league too. Is like here you just have the schedule, but there's the main league, and then there's also a tournament including all of the like every single team that exists in every state and every like the nation, and then there's also the UEFA, like the Champions League, the Libertadores is what it's called in South America.
The Continental
Championship. So, like, literally sometimes they'll be like, hey, we're going to postpone this, because
this team is busy
on that. And then sometimes, like you pointed out to me, when I was in Brazil, I was like, oh yeah, but Fluminense, they suck. And you're like, actually they're good. They're sending all their players to play in the Continental Championship, so their backups are playing in the league. I was like, oh well, why would they do that?
Yeah.
Like,
there's strategy involved, right? And I guess like taking it back, so 20 teams, 4 relegated, 4 of them get qualified to this continental tournament.
the top 4.
The top 4. I believe 1, if not 2, get like a slight qualification. So you don't qualify for the group stage. You qualify for like these preliminary knockout rounds of the Libertadores.
The tryouts, the play-in games.
The play-in games, where you have to play against, like, I don't know, the 5th place team from Bolivia, like, to determine which one gets in. And then teams like 7 all the way to like 14 will make the South American Championship, which is called the Sul-Americana. The European version of it would be the what's it called? There's like the Champions League, and then there's the
other one. I don't know.
Oh, we gotta figure it out.
Yeah,
this is gonna bug me. I know it. Oh, the Europa League.
Okay.
So the Sul-Americana is basically the Europa League of Libertadores, or of South America, and we don't have necessarily a conference league because even in the Sul-Americana, you're really scraping the bottom of the barrel with some of these teams. It gets real deep.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, why I pointed this out is because if you look at the table, it's like first 4 qualify. If, like what happened this time, if the Brazilian, like if the champion of the Libertadores also gets like a berth for the next
automatic
qualification.
Okay, cool.
So you can have an opportunity where so the champion of the previous year's Libertadores gets an automatic qualification to the group stage. The champion of the Copa do Brasil, which is the Brazilian Cup, also gets an automatic berth
to Libertadores.
To the Libertadores group stage, let's say. So you can have a situation where there's like 7 Brazilian teams making it, and then the other 2 beneath them, which just happened this year, like the champion of the Libertadores already qualified, and so they also, like, which was Botafogo. They were the champions of the Libertadores, but also the champions of the Brazilian, like, of the Brasileirão. So their automatic berth goes 1 position down. So as opposed to the first 4 and then 2, we call it a G6, group of 6. It's a group of 8, and I believe even a group of 9. It would be good to check that. But you can have a situation where pretty much half the table is qualifying.
That's so funny. That's nice that they're like, all right, let's just push it 1 down, rather than like, oh, sucks to suck. Like, I love how there's still like the cup, the Brazil Cup, which has like all the minor league teams that are still like athletic clubs, like weekend country clubs, and they get to play against the best team. Like imagine your local YMCA playing against Chelsea. And that's just like a cup. Like, everyone plays against each other. And you were telling me once, like, sometimes the local team beats Chelsea, and then everybody else makes fun of Chelsea, and then that team is just like, yeah, we did it, and then they just lose in the next round or something.
When those happen, we call zebras,
yeah.
Which I guess, what's it called? It's in English. Upsets, yeah. Upsets happen all the time, and we call those zebra when it happens. But yeah, you'll have like minnows, like small teams that aren't even like a 4th division team. Like, they just play the regional state championship, and like, this is their this is our Super Bowl, you know? We're playing against the big team from Rio. Like, they're coming to face us. And you know, in soccer, in one game, anything can happen. Heck, in any sport, in one game, anything can happen. But like
soccer, especially,
you see it happen a lot where like teams are playing for like 1 goal. You know, if we can just hold them off and then score 1 goal, and we're set. You know,
like if you're that team, like if we just play hella defense, everybody's on defense, and then we just hope for like a counter attack. Like, we get 1 goal and then we run out the clock. Like,
that's it. And what's cool about the Copa do Brasil is, especially for those minnow teams, but really for any team, the more you progress, like, as you progress in stages, you get prize money from that stage up front. So you don't have to wait until the end of the championship. Basically, like, okay, you won your first game, cool, here's $700,000. Oh, you won your next game? Here's $1.2 million. Oh, the next game? Here's $2.1 million.
Jeez.
Like, it kind of goes up and up, and then
That's
until
awesome.
I think the champion gets like 16 or 20 million reais. Like,
Jeez.
there are prizes. So again, if you're one of these minnow teams and you win one round, that's paid your entire year.
You're like, guys, we did it.
You've paid your entire year's salary to your players,
That's
plus
so
like
awesome.
everyone off one game. You
Wow.
know?
Wow.
And there have been
Group
stories
hug in the showers tonight.
There have been stories of teams who like were able to raise themselves up off one like Cinderella run in the Copa do Brasil. Where like, cool, now if it's a well-run team, which is not a given
Not all the time,
in Brazil, but if it's a well-run team, it's like, cool, now we've got a base upon which we can build. Hey, now maybe we're building a training center so we can actually have like a massage table.
Right.
Like,
now you guys can quit your day jobs.
yeah, you guys can actually quit your day jobs. We'll get you cleats. Like, now you don't have to share the locker room with like the old ladies polo class on Tuesdays.
Yeah. True, yeah. We can build like stands. We can get maybe like a security guard, like hire a ticket person.
We can actually pay your salaries for playing.
Because that's not even a given.
It's not.
It really is. Yeah. So the league this year, when does it start?
Good question.
I think I started
in April.
March 28th.
March, okay.
Is what I saw.
It's like
yeah.
late March, early April. Yeah. So this the state championships are happening now. The preliminary rounds of the Libertadores are happening now. The initial rounds of the Copa do Brasil are going to happen soon. But right now it's kind of like state championship focus. In a way, it's the preseason. It's like the tune-ups.
Right.
It's where teams are, you know. But again, it's a very pressure-filled preseason.
I think that's all the time for this podcast. If you guys want to follow along with the league, like follow us. If you like this video, like it. If you follow a North American league or a European team, comment below what that is, and we'll help you figure out what team you would support in the Brazilian league.
I want to we are creating a guide right now to help you know which team you should cheer for in Brazil. And that's based on like where you're from, what teams you cheer for in North America, why you chose to cheer for those teams. Again, we'll build a little profile of you as a fan, and we'll give you a personalized recommendation. All right.
Follow us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, Patreon if you want to see some exclusive stuff. If you want to see videos before that they drop on YouTube, ad-free stuff, and join. Welcome.
Ciao. Oh, yeah, we say ciao, and it sounds Italian, but ciao just means bye.